Africa. Now, let me begin with our top story tonight. And 2 migrant detention centers in Libya have been shut down and several others are due to close, according to officials there. Most of the upcoming closures are down to the poor conditions and the fact that they are in residential areas, according to local media. A total of 18 official detention centers have been shut down in recent months, but 34 remain across the country. The gradual closure of official migrant detention centers in Libya is seen as a positive development because most are reputed to be hubs for abuse. The International Organization for Migration, IOM, confirmed to the BBC that 2 centers were shut down on Tuesday. This week, the head of Libya's Department for Combating Irregular Migration reportedly said several others will also be shut down because they don't meet human rights standards. However, rights observers say they would like to see some policy changes in parallel to these moves, including an end to the criminalization of illegal entry. Our military chiefs from troop-contributing countries of the African Union mission in Somalia, well known as AMISOM, have called for more support to enable the mission effectively execute its mandate of securing Somalia. The chiefs of defense forces met the appeal at the ongoing TCCS meeting in Kampala, Uganda, hosted by President Yoweri Museveni. Uganda's Chief of Defense Forces, General David Muhoozi, expressed concern that AMISOM had to contend with reduced troop levels despite the expanded military operations and the extended lines of communication. The Kampala gathering is a follow-up to a meeting by the heads of states from TCCS held in September 21st, 2017. In New York, on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, to exchange views on the future of AMISOM following the adoption of the UN Security Council Resolution 2372-2017. The resolution adopted in August last year authorizes a gradual troop reduction in Somalia and transfer of national security responsibilities from AMISOM to the Somali National Security Forces.
The mission progress, taking into account the political, cultural and other factors at play in order to realign our strategies correctly, both to the current but in response to other emerging conflict situations within our operating environment. AMISOM continues to contend with the challenges of the mismatch between the mission tasks and the requisite resources and measures to cause the desired effect within the desired timelines. This includes boots on the ground, force enablers, efficient mission support, and of course, the building of the SNA. As you all know, we now contend with reduced troop levels.
From Somalia, let me now take you to Mali, where 4 UN peacekeepers were killed on Wednesday when a mine exploded under their vehicle in central Mali in a deliberate attack, capping a bloody week for civilians and security forces in the West African nation. Jihadists have ramped up their activities in central Mali in recent months, targeting domestic and foreign forces and violence once confined to the restive north. The United Nations said in a statement that the explosion of a mine or IED against a MINUSMA vehicle on the Boni Dunsa Road in the Mopti region killed the 4 peacekeepers and wounded 4 more. The mission, known by the acronym MINUSMA, counts almost 11,000 peacekeepers and has been deployed in Mali since 2013 to counter jihadist insurgency and general lawlessness. 6 Malian soldiers were killed on Tuesday. Their vehicle struck a mine, the army said on Wednesday, and a forest ranger was gunned down in a 3rd incident blamed on jihadists.
We have just received information from the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali indicating that a UN military vehicle was hit by an improvised explosive device on the Boni Douentza axis in the region of Mopti in Mali. Preliminary reports indicate that 4 peacekeepers were killed and 4 others were wounded. Medical evacuations are currently ongoing.
Now, Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo has called for the African Union to play a greater role in resolving the Libyan crisis and reforming the UN Security Council. He spoke at a joint press conference with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Addo also wants German authorities to treat African migrants humanely. The president says though migrants may offend German laws, they should be treated with respect. Earlier, he spoke at the 5th German African Economic Forum in Dortmund, Germany, under the theme, quote-unquote, African market its potential and opportunities for German businesses.
Sit down, please.
And the view that Ghana takes is that the African Union should be the lead entity in driving for the solution in Libya. It has been relegated to the sidelines. It's well known that the African Union has a position on the need for a reform, a comprehensive reform of the United Nations. And that comprehensive reform requires a restructuring of the Security Council.
Now, Gabon accused French Environmental Services Group Volley of widespread pollution at Sage, the power and water utility it operates in the country, amid a growing dispute over the company's concession. Vola, which has already threatened legal action after the government seized Sage earlier this month and said it will cancel its concession, rejected the accusations. Now, speaking to reporters in the capital, Libreville, government spokesman Alain Claude Billy said an environmental inspection of power and water pumping stations revealed that nearly all Sage sites were contaminated with petroleum waste. The government has complained for years about frequent water cuts in the capital, Libreville, and threatened to freeze Vola's concession, responding to critics who accused the government of not doing enough and only taking action after it was too late.
N'entendons pas du tout.
We were not waiting to make our announcements to find a name.
Now, an exhibition of photos, videos, paintings and posters, among other images captured during protest against Zimbabwe's former long-serving president Robert Mugabe last year, recently opened at the National Gallery of Zimbabwe. Now, the work, documented by artists and ordinary Zimbabweans as President Robert Mugabe was being forced out of office by the military, aims to explore various topics from jubilation to uncertainty, resilience and hope at a time when Mugabe was in the tightest spot of his 37-year rule. Now, the show title, Lost and Found, gives insight during a period when civilians were on the edge, unsure of what will become of the country's security situation. Tanks were on the streets and troops had occupied the state broadcaster from where the army had announced it had taken control of Zimbabwe. People came out in large numbers to show support for the army, and Mugabe's tenure finally came to an end on November 21st following the de facto military coup.
As people in Africa, our stories have been told by many other people. So the motivation was for us to be able to tell our own story through the images that you are seeing in this exhibition, which are coming from both professional and non-professional photographers and artists coming from all over Zimbabwe to be able to tell their story, the events and the moments that transpired into a new dispensation in Zimbabwe on the 18th of November 2017.
The messages that are here are more of the resilience of the people, what people wanted. For the longest time, we've been kind of passive nationals in the country. We've had passive nationals in the country, but we've had an opportunity to show our resilience. We went and marched, and we documented the march, showing what people stood for, what their need was.
You know, on the day you don't see the different angles. We didn't see the different angles, and now to experience it and to see through other people's eyes, it just really brings back really good emotions.
It's brought back those memories of and those feelings of that day when we felt liberated, we felt free, we felt like it was a new beginning for the country.
On the 18th of November, we decided that the atmosphere was too good, and the opportunity was actually being lost because the people were actually worried about police tear gassing and disrupting the march. So when on Friday night we decided to pack up the drone, charge everything, and on the Saturday we went and we actually beamed most of the footage live on Facebook.
And still, in Zimbabwe, white farmers still face an uncertain future despite the government assurances that their said lands will be returned to them. Now, when the riot police arrived, Zimbabwean farm worker Mary Muriyengwe saw her life fall apart as her job and her home disappeared in the ruthless land seizures that defined Robert Mugabe's rule. Muriyengwe, aged 35, watched as police carrying AK-47 rifles released tear gas to force white farmers Robert Smart off his land in June 2017, perhaps the last of 18 years of evictions that helped to trigger the country's economic collapse. Now, to her shock and amazement, Muriyengwe is now back at work on the farm and back living in her modest house after Mugabe was ousted in November and Emmerson Mnangagwa became president there. Smart was allowed to return to his farm within weeks of Mnangagwa's inauguration, becoming the first and so far the only white farmer to be given back his property.
Came with some police support unit and all dressed up in riot gear with AKs and shields and all that to evict people. We didn't know this is how it was done. And we were told to get out of our houses, and they started picking up stuff because they had a lot of hired help from Mutari in these trucks, which you presume Mananga must have hired. And they came and they went to both our houses, took the stuff out and threw it onto the road. There was the feeling of joy that we're allowed back here thanks to the new government and the president and, of course, our resident minister, who's been very, very helpful to us. All that was a feeling of joy coming back, and not only us, it was all our people around here. But then, it's hard to describe the feeling when you go into your house and it's totally trashed. There's nothing there. You haven't got anything.
And from Zimbabwe, I'm sure you'll want to know what is happening in the East African region. And Rwanda has now ordered about 700 churches be closed down for failing to comply with building regulations and for noise pollution. Our Kigali-based correspondent has this and more news making headlines in Rwanda.
Now, one of the biggest stories making headlines right here in Rwanda is that of the closure of 714 churches by the government of Rwanda. Now, this was done through the Rwanda Governance Board, an institutional organ that is charged with regulation and registration of non-governmental organizations. The reasons given by the officials from this organization or board is that most of these churches fell short of hygiene standards. Some of them were operating under tents, and most of them also had issues with their legal status. This is seen as one of the biggest moves by the government of Rwanda to crack down on churches that are continuing to mushroom right here in Rwanda. For Bottomline Africa, I'm Eugene Anangwe reporting.
Thank you, Eugene Anangwe, for that. Now, traders at the textile market in Cairo's Al-Azhar district were once used to seeing their shops filled with customers, but soaring prices have driven many away. The reason for the spiraling cost, drastic reforms that the government pledged will bring benefits to the turmoil-hit nation. But far from improvements, many Egyptians say they feel worse off, and the economic woes could present the major challenge for President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi as he approaches an election essentially unopposed. Egypt's presidential vote from March 26 to 28 is the third since the 2011 uprising toppled longtime ruler Hosni Mubarak, and Sisi looks certain to win a second four-year term in office. Most of his rivals have either been sidelined or withdrawn, and the only other candidate, Musa Mustafa Musa, has himself previously expressed support for the ex-military chief.
Prices are exorbitant and the money evaporates quickly. £100 note is barely enough to buy cheese or other items at the supermarket. Before, the salary was enough for the whole month. A month's salary of £3,000 or £4,000 is no longer enough to cover household expenses.
Prices are exorbitant and have tripled and even quadrupled as the situation of people deteriorates and there is no more purchasing power. People cannot afford to buy duvets or cover the cost for wedding preparations. We are hoping that the local industry will start being active again. I know some factory owners who have closed their factories and left. There is nothing to encourage these people, and economic activity will be stimulated again if the government encourages manufacturers. The customer is looking for local products at low prices because exported products purchased in US dollars are now expensive.